Thanks for tuning in today. I am very excited about this vlog. This is my very first time to have a guest on. So we are going to be talking about the connection between food and mood. And this is such a broad topic, so we decided to narrow it down to talking about emotional eating, the physical and psychological effects of eating and diet on the general population and fitness competitors. So stay tuned if this sounds interesting to you. So a little bit of background information about my guest today. Her name is Stephanie Jones, and she is a registered dietitian with a degree from Purdue University in dietetics. She also has 17 years of fitness and sports experience. She currently works for the U.S. Navy as a fitness specialist, and she has also worked as a coach for fitness competitors at the national level. And she is also a past fitness competitor herself. So she brings to the table a lot of experience and insight about food and sports and fitness. So I can't wait to sit down with her and start this interview. So Stephanie, could you tell our viewers a little bit about your area of focus or your specialty?
Yeah, I focus really on two ends of the spectrum of the general population, which would be those with weight management control issues, as well as the athletic population, specifically competitive physique athletes.
Okay. So, I bet those two kind of lend themselves to different types of challenges.
They do, but they have some commonalities as well.
What would you say that some of those common denominators are?
Extreme thinking about food, emotional eating, control of diet and intake.
When you say extreme thinking, do you mean like black and white thinking?
Absolutely. Good and bad specifically, that you can eat this food but not that food, that eating a particular type of food or too much of one food will be detrimental to an outcome.
Okay. That kind of sounds like emotional eating to me.
It definitely can be emotional eating. I think most people at some point experience emotional eating, but these particular subgroups of the population perhaps more than others.
Right. So I think a good definition for emotional eating would be any kind of eating that we engage in when we're experiencing a negative emotion, like sadness or anger or even boredom sometimes. It's become so commonplace that in our society in the last couple of years we've adopted the word hangry or hanger. I think this just kind of exemplifies just how connected our food and our mood can be. So how often would you say that you see emotional eating in your clients?
Pretty much every day, whether it's just normal, everyday folks experiencing some kind of negative emotion, or competitors, which see that a lot just by the nature of their sport. Yeah, they're kind of in an extreme environment with extreme thinking. So if you take just a normal person who experiences the everyday emotions of happiness, sadness, and you really amplify that, you see the effects of that too in their eating patterns.
What types of foods do you see your clients consuming that engage in emotional eating a lot?
Well, broadly, I would say my clients generally, I'm sure probably with you and me as well, because we're average everyday people too.
Absolutely.
Comfort foods. You know, things, and we don't necessarily think of, a lean chicken breast as a comfort food or something we reach for when we
bag of broccoli.
Or bag of broccoli, not going to happen. I never ever hear accounts of, I feel guilty because I ate too much broccoli. It's never ever that. That's never the case. So it's the comfort foods, the sweets, the high carbohydrate meals, cookies, mashed potatoes and gravy, things that you really connect with, that make you feel good.
One of the reasons why we feel so good when we eat comfort foods is because it is initiating what's called our reward center in our brain. So our feel-good hormones, one specifically that's called dopamine, that one is released in big quantities, in large quantities whenever we engage in eating really yummy foods like desserts and fried chicken and all that kind of stuff that makes us feel good. And it can be really, really compared to addiction in the sense that when people take drugs, that reward system is also initiated and releasing that dopamine and the serotonin. emotionally eating can really mimic that same cycle that happens, even to the point where you can deplete those stores of those chemicals in your brain and have to eat more of that food to be able to feel the same way. So Stephanie, what type of physical effects would you say that high amounts of sugar and fats and carbohydrates have on the body?
So along with the associated feelings of happiness and wellness, and that relief from that negative emotion, also comes a burst of energy.
Sure.
Just
that makes sense.
Feeling good all around, physically and mentally.
Okay.
But that's also followed up by the crash, what we call the crash. So
what is the crash
The
like?
crash feels tired and lethargic, and often comes with feelings of guilt and shame for having
back to those negative emotions.
Yeah, back to those negative emotions, which just feeds itself into this cycle. Negative emotions breed the need for comfort,
sure,
which leads itself to really consuming too much of those foods that bring you comfort.
Right.
And the cycle just repeats.
So would you say that emotional eating is an obstacle for people trying to reach their fitness goals and their weight loss goals?
I think so. Absolutely. It's something I address on a daily basis with my clients. Just for all the reasons we've already established, that emotional eating in and of itself really entails eating more to feel comforted when we're experiencing negative emotions, whether it's stress or timelines or depression or any myriad of emotions that are negative. We're going to seek to draw comfort from our food. And those foods are never the lean, healthier options that we think of. They're always the comfort foods that are higher in starch and sugars and fats.
Release that dopamine.
Yeah,
for you.
Exactly. So often that reward system is triggered, and sometimes it's not stopped early enough. And we just keep eating and eating and eating and eating, and those calories accumulate. Excess calories, which translates into increased weight, which really is very defeating, feels very defeating for my clients. So, weight gain is pretty much the opposite of what they're looking for. So really finding a way, strategies to combat that emotional eating is really key in our clients' coach relationship.
Sure, absolutely. And it sounds like even in some maybe more severe cases that psychological help is probably needed.
Yes, there have been cases, where I've needed to refer to therapists or other dietitians that deal specifically with particular conditions. Right,
because it sounds like in order to meet these goals that they set for themselves, that you have to get your emotions under control, and you've got to develop alternative coping skills and not rely on food for comfort.
Absolutely. And I would think I would say that's maybe 85% of my my effort and skill comes into play with that very issue. It's not so much telling my clients what to eat, or as much as it is showing them how to get there. And how to actually incorporate healthy eating into their lifestyle and manage emotional eating.
So it sounds like emotional eating is a feature of disordered eating. Not to be confused with eating disorders. Could you maybe explain the difference between those?
Disordered eating often has some of the hallmarks of eating disorders, such as restrictive eating, binge eating, but probably one of the key differences is that it's sporadic. It's not an everyday event, and it's not necessarily linked to a accompanying medical or mental condition.
Oh, I see.
So a diagnosed psychological condition that requires professional help.
Right, because I know eating disorders are often co-occurring with other disorders such as OCD, panic disorder, depression, and things like that. You often see those two things diagnosed together.
Right, and probably most people at some point in their lives, most people have had disordered eating at some point, whether it's triggered by grief from perhaps a loss in the family or some specific life-changing events, whereas eating disorders are a little bit different in that there may be no one particular initiator, whereas eating disorders are again, long-term,
Sure.
more chronic, and everyday.
Sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So we'd like to share with you some tips that you could follow if you feel like you are struggling with emotional eating or it's kind of gotten out of control and you're into self-help. One of the things that you could do is to tame your stress level. And of course, a way to do that is to see someone like me, a therapist, who can help you with relaxation techniques and coping skills, guided imagery, things like that. Things that you could do on your own would be like yoga or meditation. Any other tips that you could think of?
Keeping a food diary or keeping track of your food and relating that to your emotions at the time. So over time you might see a pattern between your intake and how you're feeling at the time, and that can be a great learning tool, as well as a tool to help you keep track and
Absolutely.
Not overeat.
That sounds
Track
like a
your
really a good awareness building tool.
Exactly.
Because I think people mindlessly eat a lot and they don't even realize why they're eating, how much they're eating, are they actually even hungry?
Right, exactly.
Like
so kind of, it's a good defining tool to differentiate between all of those.
So employing a support system might be a really good thing to do if you're trying to get over your emotional eating. Having somebody on speed dial, like a good friend or a trusted family member, to help you kind of talk through those negative emotions that you're feeling so that you can deal with it and cope with it in a healthier way instead of reaching for food to comfort you.
And that's not to say that you have to deprive it yourself. We're all human. We like certain foods, and by all means, we should have those foods that we enjoy. It shouldn't be about deprivation. It should just be about portion control and recognizing your triggers. So I know we all have examples of probably trigger foods that we love and that we can't necessarily have around us because we tend to go overboard. And we are all humans, so it's important to realize that all of us at some time have setbacks. We all fall. Sometimes we just have to get back up, get back on that horse and keep going. So if you do happen to have an episode where you find yourself victim to emotional eating, that's okay. Don't beat yourself up about it. Instead, learn from it and press on, keep going, and figure out what are you going to do next time. What's the strategy that you can use to avoid that situation in the future?
So Stephanie, I just want to thank you so much for dedicating so much of your time tonight, especially on a Saturday night, to spend with me and sharing your knowledge and your expertise. And hopefully our viewers got something from this vlog that they can use in their daily life. And as always, we would like you to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Ask us any questions or comments, and we'd be happy to answer those for you below this video. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Right. That's good.
No, so my niche. So my niche is really very broad, which makes it not a niche. So so what was it?
Hey. Experiences with that.
Yeah.
You know how difficult it
Are we
can
still
be.
recording?
We are.
Were we really?
We're
sure?
1 minute and 32 seconds.
Okay, let me back up.
Okay.
So. All right, erase.
Okay,
Erase.
okay.
Erase.